Hey everybody, this is Jules. I'm going to try and do a new type of video today. This is going to be a chess analysis of one of my games. So I'm funkdaddio. As you can see, I'm rated 1240. My goal is to try and get to 1300, which is a pretty decent for Blitz. So these games are Blitz is 5-minute games. There's no added time when you make a move or anything like that. It's just you got 5 minutes, and the only exception to winning or losing is if you only have a king, you can't win. If you only have a king, you can only tie or lose. So that's Blitz in a nutshell. And I'm against foxdon. So because it's Blitz, we're moving super fast. You don't really have a lot of time to think. You're just moving one piece every 5 seconds. But if you're in a really precise like strategic moment, then yeah, maybe 20 to 30 seconds is acceptable. But yeah, in a typical game, there's about like 40 moves that are done, so you don't want to spend too long on it. Okay, so I'll get started with some of the plays. As you can see, I move knight to f3. This is kind of a standard textbook move. It's not really the Bobby Fischer move of e4, and it's not really like the Queen's Gambit or anything like that. But the reason I move knight to e4 is because I like to develop this pawn over here, get my bishop up, and do what's called a fianchetto, which is like when the bishop can attack all the way across the board. For low-level players like myself and my opponents, oftentimes there will be blunders with especially this pawn, or even like grabbing the rook or something like that. So it's just kind of like a nice defense. And after you do something like that, you can snug your king in over here. Um, okay, so that was the next I did is of course I need to take control of the mid as well, because as soon as if I don't push up my pawn right now, which is double blocked by the knight and the queen, then black can move up, and you always want like a bit of control of the middle. So as white, it's kind of like you're supposed to take control over the middle before black. So we go pawn to e4, d4, matching that. Here I'm moving up my bishop. Okay, so this is an interesting move by black. So this is a setup for something called the fried liver attack. It has a weird name, but that's what it's called. And the purpose of this is, if I were to do something like bishop over here, which is my intended plan, and like he knows it is, if he were to move knight over here, he would have pressure on this pawn, which would have no piece defending it. I would have to, put my knight in a position that I don't really want to, because over here it's a lot weaker. I need my knight to have control over the center of the board, so. And especially if it's done on the king side, the fried liver attack, then I wouldn't even have my queen to defend it. So he could get a free pawn, check me, and yeah, so you can kind of do this attack, but on this side over here. But he's doing it on this side. But anyway, that's not what happened, because I immediately moved my pawn up, which is an excellent move according to the engine. You'll see that there are definitely some blunders that the engine points out, and I'll talk about that as well. He's moves up his queen. This is because he might do a queenside castle. I kind of like it when I know when the opponent's going to castle right away. So immediately I'll start moving up my pawns to attack. And typically at low levels, again, when given the opportunity, people castle right away. So getting the initiative with my pawns up here, like over here and over here, is definitely good. So fianchetto, he's being aggressive with this. I'm not going to take, because then his queen will come here, and he'll just leave his queen here, and it'll just be super annoying for me. I won't be able to castle on my king side, and yeah, just having the queen right here with no bishop to defend is super annoying. So I don't take, I just castle. He trades, and I'll take his bishop, and then we're kind of like even Steven after that. He develops his knight, and immediately I start pushing up, because I'm pretty sure he's going to be castling queenside. I guess the engine says to move my bishop up, develop my bishop. I'll do that eventually. Yeah, he moves up his pawn. Oops, can't do that. Sorry about that. I fast forwarded to the end. I move up my my pawn, so eventually I want to do some sort of pressure on the knight, maybe get a trade in here, and then hopefully snag his rook if it's undefended. He's just blocking, protecting his pawn mid. This bishop will defend my rook just in case his rook snags mine. He's developing. Okay, so this move over here, he's now saying, okay, maybe castling on this side is not the greatest idea. I'm not going to really develop this bishop. I'm just going to move him out of the way so I can castle kingside, which is a great idea, and he does do that. I move up my pawn here. I guess the engine says this is a mistake, but yeah, it's I kind of want to get some trades going. He moves his knight back, which I also think is a pretty shitty move. If he took with the if he took here, I would have to take his pawn, and then he can immediately trade my rook. I'd have to get my queen in a bad position. He could eventually move his rook down on the a file. Any move that's kind of like forces me to move my queen out of harm's way is always advantageous for him. So I'm kind of getting a little defense up in here. He moves up, undefended pawn. Maybe not the best idea. So now I have this nice little defense over here. I have these double pawns blocked, and then my pawns which are protecting those pawns are blocked by some of my minor pieces, like my knights. He moves up. Yeah, I'm guess I'm trying to put pressure over here. I don't really have too much of a plan with this one. He matches, and now I have kind of like this other kind of setup. So like the knight's protecting this, it's putting pressure here, double pressure on this one. He moves up his knight. That's actually a great move. So because my bishop is undefended, I now have to move to defend it. So my queen comes up. I'm being a little aggressive with my knight over here. It didn't really have like too much of a plan. Again, you're on the clock, so you don't have a lot of time to think. But I just kind of wanted to dislodge his queen a little bit. So I can, eventually like take a free pawn, because this is pretty much undefended other than the queen, which means that if I have a little bit of support, he won't be able to trade with me. But my plan didn't really work out, because he puts pressure on my knight, meaning I have to basically trade. He goes over here, he trades. I push back the knight, trade, pushing up the pawn. And then the rook over on the c file, with the idea that like eventually these pawns will move. I want to get my queen out of the way, and once these pawns are dislodged, I'll just have an immediate attack on the queen, so he'll have to spend a turn moving the queen, whereas maybe my queen can like pick up one of these pawns in the middle or something like that. He matches. Yeah, so this is a mistake apparently. Getting some trades going. However, with this move here, this is kind of my idea was that I would be able to grab a free pawn. So it'd be like there's two black pawns and I'm only getting rid of one white. So 1, 2, and then 3. So I'm up one pawn from the exchange. However, this kind of puts black into a pretty nice situation, which is bishop to f6. So bishop to f6 is really good because I can't take with my queen, and if I run away with my queen, if I were to go like over here or something like that, he would immediately just take my rook. And by him taking the rook, I lose one of my like best pieces. A bishop for a rook is always a good trade. You should basically always do it, and especially because they're kind of like in line over here against these two black rooks down here. There could be some very quick trade setups that happen where like the rooks just start battling, and if you are down a rook, then you could lose the other one very, very easily. So this is a great move by him, and so I'm kind of panicking. I take a little bit of time trying to figure this one out. In my head, I'm like, okay, take. If I take his pawn, he'll take my queen. I take his queen. Then he'll take my rook. However, I can. Oh, then he'll take my rook down here. I take his rook. He takes my rook. So I wish I could. I think I can draw arrows. Yeah. So it's basically like take. Oh wait, no, it's my turn. Sorry. Let's draw it out. So take, 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 and then next move would be take. And so what would be left would be me taking this, because my rook is now here, and then him taking finally with the rook. The ending situation would be I only have one knight, and he has a rook, which is it's not a guaranteed win, but it's at the pro level this would be a guaranteed win for him. His rook would quickly clean up all of my pawns, where my knight would try to do some damage, but it would be quite difficult. The knight doesn't have nearly as much mobility, so I knew it wasn't great, but the alternative was, just give up and lose a minor piece. So it would be something like this, which is actually what maybe not take with that, but take with the knight. But the engine it was a complicated line to see. So what I did was I ended up taking, which the the engine says is a complete blunder. But you'll see what happens. So he takes my queen, which is a brilliant move, and I do a lot of chess analysis of my games, and I actually rarely see this. I rarely see a brilliant move, even though it seemed pretty obvious. You just take the queen, but this is what happened. I take his queen, he takes my rook, which you know seems like a good move because he takes. Then it's 2 versus 1, right? So he'll have a rook and a bishop versus just my knight. So it seems really good. But here I move up pawn, forking his rooks. And what happens is that he can't even take my pawn. He can take my my rook, but what he doesn't see is that I can take one of his rooks and immediately put him in check. So I would be up an entire rook at the end of this exchange at the minimum. So let's. He actually didn't make any moves after this. He just straight up forfeited. But let's say he did this. I go over here. I promote queen. He's in check, and then after he moves his king, I grab his rook. If he decides to do something like this, I would take, put him in check. He has to take, and then I'm up a rook in this situation. So it would be pretty much over for him. So yeah, that's the end of the game. I ended up winning with this move right here. That came out of a blunder. As you can see, like blitz games are kind of sporadic that way. Like anything can happen. You can't always do perfect moves all the time. Yeah. So thanks for watching. That was my first ever chess analysis of one of my games. One that I kind of fucked up, but had a good outcome in the end. Thanks.